I sat in the back row at my mother's funeral, barely holding myself together. My hands were shaking the whole time. When the lawyer walked up to me afterward and placed a sealed envelope in my palm, I thought it was just a goodbye letter. Maybe a few kind words she never said when she was alive. But when I opened it, my breath stopped. Inside was a deed to a mountain cabin in Big Fork. My name was the only one on it. And then I heard my aunt whisper behind me, "We'll take it from her before she even knows what it's worth." Stick with me, because I didn't cry. I didn't react. I just stood there, pretending I heard nothing. I hadn't been home in 2 years. Not since my family decided I was the problem. When my mom got sick, they blamed me for not coming around enough. When I tried to explain, they said I was dramatic. So I left. And somehow I became the easiest person to hate. Walking back into that town felt like walking into a courtroom where everyone had already decided I was guilty. No one hugged me. No one asked how I was holding up. They just watched me, whispered, counted what I might get. At the will reading, everything went exactly as expected. My Aunt Denise sat straight, already smiling. My cousin Clayton kept checking his phone. The lawyer read the main will. Small things. Jewelry. Old furniture. Nothing important. Then he paused. He asked Marin Huxley to stay behind. My heart dropped. When the room cleared, he handed me another envelope and said quietly, "Your mother asked me to give this to you alone." Inside was a handwritten letter and the deed. She had never told anyone about the cabin. Not Denise. Not Clayton. No one. My chest felt tight. Confused. Sad. Angry. All at once. As I walked down the hallway, I heard their voices from the side room. "She doesn't even know what that land is worth," Denise said. Clayton laughed. "We just need her to sign something. She's emotional. She'll do it." That was the moment something inside me went cold. I didn't confront them. I didn't ask questions. I wiped my face, took a deep breath, and walked back in with my head down. They thought I was weak. They had no idea I was already learning how to protect myself. I acted confused on purpose. When my Aunt Denise started asking questions about the cabin, I lowered my eyes and said I didn't really understand the papers. I told her I thought it was just an old place in the woods. Her face changed right away. Not angry, relieved. Suddenly, everyone was kind. Denise touched my shoulder like she cared. Clayton offered to carry my bag. Even people who hadn't spoken to me in years were smiling. It felt fake, but I played along. I nodded. I said thank you. I let them think I was still the same quiet girl they used to talk over. That night, Denise insisted I stay at the family house. "You shouldn't be alone right now," she said softly. "You need family while you grieve." The word family almost made me laugh. The house hadn't changed. Same old couch. Same smell of dust and cleaning spray. They gave me the small guest room at the end of the hall. Denise hugged me before bed and said, "Get some rest. We'll talk tomorrow." I waited until the house went quiet. Something didn't feel right. The room felt watched. When I stood near the dresser, I noticed a tiny red light blinking behind a picture frame. My heart started pounding. I lifted the frame slowly. Behind it was a small hidden camera, pointed directly at the bed. My hands went cold. They weren't trying to help me. They were trying to study me. I searched the room carefully after that. Inside the trash bin, under old tissues, I found torn paper. When I put the pieces together on the bed, my stomach dropped. It was a copy of the cabin deed. Not mine. This one had my name spelled wrong. The signature looked like mine, but it wasn't. Someone had already tried to recreate it. They were practicing. Getting ready. I sat on the bed for a long time, staring at those papers. They were planning something bigger than kindness. Bigger than pressure. They wanted control. That night, I barely slept. Every sound in the hallway made my body tense. I realized then that this wasn't just about money. They didn't see me as a niece or cousin. I was an obstacle. In the morning, Denise smiled at me over breakfast and asked gently, "Did you sleep okay, sweetheart?" I smiled back and said yes. Inside, I already knew one thing for sure. I couldn't trust anyone in that house again. Ezra was the only one who acted normal around me. He showed up the next afternoon with 2 cups of coffee and sat beside me on the porch. He told me he was sorry about Mom. He said he hated how the family treated me before. For a moment, I almost believed him. We talked about small things. Old memories. School. Life. He even laughed a little, and I felt my guard drop. It felt good to have someone on my side again. That was my mistake. Later that evening, I went to take a shower. When I came back to the room, my purse was open on the bed. I clearly remembered zipping it before I left. Ezra was standing near the dresser. He froze when he saw me. "I was just checking on you," he said quickly. "You've been stressed. I thought you might forget your meds." I didn't even take medication. My heart started racing, but I kept my voice calm. I nodded like I understood. He smiled awkwardly and left the room. As soon as the door closed, I checked my bag. Nothing was missing, but everything had been moved. My wallet, my papers, the envelope from the lawyer. He wasn't worried about my health. He was searching for proof. That night, I couldn't sleep again. Around midnight, I heard him arguing quietly on the phone outside. I stood near the door and listened. "I told you it's real," he whispered. "That land isn't some old cabin. It's worth a fortune. I just need time." My stomach dropped. The next morning, I did something I never planned to do. I searched his old backpack in the garage. Inside were unopened bills, red letters, and loan notices. Thousands of dollars. Credit cards maxed out. Final warnings. Ezra was drowning. And suddenly everything made sense. The kindness. The smiles. The pressure. They weren't grieving my mother. They were waiting for a payout. They believed the cabin was worth millions. That was why Denise was acting sweet. That was why Clayton kept watching me. That was why Ezra pretended to care. They didn't want me safe. They wanted me silent. When Ezra sat next to me later and asked gently, "You okay, sis?" I smiled back. "Yeah," I said. "Just tired." Inside, something hardened. This wasn't one person being greedy. This was all of them. And now I finally understood the truth. I wasn't visiting family. I was standing in the middle of a plan they had already agreed on. I didn't tell anyone I was going to the cabin. Early the next morning, I packed a small bag and left before sunrise. The road to Big Fork was long and quiet, surrounded by trees and mountains. I kept checking my mirror, my hands tight on the steering wheel. Halfway there, a dark truck appeared behind me. At first, I thought nothing of it. But when I slowed, it sped up. When I changed lanes, it followed. My chest tightened. Suddenly, the truck swerved close, nearly forcing me off the road. I screamed and slammed the brakes. The driver sped away without stopping. My whole body shook. That was when I knew someone didn't want me reaching that place. When I finally arrived, I expected a small, broken cabin. Instead, I found a large wooden lodge hidden deep in the trees. It looked old but strong. Built for hunters. Thick doors. Heavy locks. This wasn't some forgotten shack. Inside, the air smelled of dust and pine. There were mounted antlers on the walls and long tables covered in scratches. In the back, I noticed a metal door leading down. It was locked tight. I felt uneasy, but curiosity pushed me forward. While walking across the floor, one board creaked differently. I knelt and lifted it carefully. Underneath was a small wrapped book, sealed in plastic. It was a ledger. My hands trembled as I opened it. Page after page showed names I didn't recognize. Dates. Cash amounts. Some small. Some massive. All written in my mother's handwriting. This wasn't savings. This was something hidden. As I kept reading, my stomach turned. The payments were regular. Organized. Quiet. Whoever this money belonged to had trusted my mother to move it without being seen. My mother wasn't just protecting herself. She was protecting someone else. And she was gone now. That meant one thing. The secret had landed on me. I sat on the floor for a long time, trying to breathe. My mom had never explained any of this. She never warned me. But now I understood why she hid the cabin. Why she never told the family. They weren't just greedy. They were dangerous. I put the ledger back, locked everything carefully, and left the lodge before dark. As I drove away, my phone buzzed with missed calls from Denise. For the first time, I didn't feel scared. I felt alert. Because whatever my mother had been hiding, I was now standing in the middle of it, and I might be the only person left who knew the truth. When I returned to town, Denise insisted on having a dinner that same night. She would have wanted us together, she said, smiling too wide. A celebration of her life. The word celebration felt wrong, but I agreed. The table was full. Candles. Soft music. Everyone dressed nicely, like it was a holiday instead of a funeral week. Denise poured wine herself and placed a glass right in front of me. "Drink," she said gently. "It'll help you relax." I lifted the glass, smelled it, then set it back down. My stomach turned. I told her I had a headache and didn't feel well. She frowned for just a second, then smiled again. They laughed too loudly. told old stories, pretended we were close. Clayton kept watching my hands. Ezra kept asking if I felt okay. Every move felt rehearsed. I didn't drink a single sip. After dinner, I went to the bathroom and quietly poured the wine down the sink. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear. An hour later, the house was quieter. Some people were in the living room. Others had stepped outside. I walked back toward my room when I heard fast breathing. It was coming from the hallway. Denise was crouched beside the table where I had left my phone charging. She was tapping the screen again and again. "Face ID. Face ID," she whispered. My heart slammed in my chest. She hadn't noticed me yet. I took a step forward and made my foot hit the floor loudly on purpose. She jumped. "Oh," she laughed nervously. "I was just checking the time. My phone died." She held mine up like it was nothing. I forced a tired smile and took it back. "That's okay. I forget things too." Inside, I felt sick. They didn't just want the deed anymore. They wanted access. They wanted messages, photos, proof, anything that could help them control me. That night, I locked my door and pushed a chair under the handle. I barely slept. My mind kept replaying Denise's hands shaking as she tried to open my phone. They weren't grieving. They were rushing. Whatever they believed I had, they were afraid I might use it first. The next morning, Denise knocked gently and asked, "Did you sleep all right, sweetheart?" I smiled politely and said yes. But I already knew something important. They were running out of patience. And when people like that panic, they stop pretending to be kind. The next morning, I left the house without telling anyone. I drove straight to the local bank my mother used for years. It was small and quiet, the kind of place where everyone knows each other. My hands were shaking as I walked inside. At the counter, I said my mother's name. The teller looked up and paused. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said softly. "She left instructions in case you came." That sentence made my chest tighten. She led me to a private room and brought out a small metal box. My mother had listed me as the only person allowed to access it after her death. No one else. Not Denise. Not Ezra. Not anyone. When the box opened, I felt like I couldn't breathe. Inside was a folder neatly arranged. The first document was a second will. It was signed, dated, and officially notarized. My mother's handwriting filled the margins with notes. And there it was, clear as day. Everything was left to me. The cabin. The accounts. The contents of the safe. Everyone else was cut out completely. My stomach dropped as I kept reading. The will explained that if any earlier version appeared, it was not valid. She wrote that she feared her family would try to manipulate or forge documents after her death. She was right. At the bottom of the folder was a copy of the will my family had shown at the reading. Stamped in red ink across the page was one word: invalid. I sat there in silence, tears finally falling. Not from sadness, but from understanding. My mother knew exactly what would happen. She just never had time to warn me. The banker asked if I was okay. I nodded and thanked her. As I walked back to my car, something inside me changed. I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't scared. I had proof. Back at the house, the family acted normal. Denise asked if I wanted tea. Ezra smiled like nothing had happened. Clayton joked about paperwork and lawyers. I smiled back. But this time, it wasn't fear behind my smile. It was control. They thought they had the real will. They didn't know theirs was fake. And for the first time since the funeral, I wasn't trying to survive the situation anymore. I was preparing to end it, on my terms. After the bank visit, I didn't confront anyone. Instead, I did exactly what they expected. I acted tired, confused, overwhelmed. That afternoon, I told Denise I didn't understand the paperwork anymore, and that maybe it would be easier if they helped handle everything. Her eyes lit up, even though she tried to hide it. "We'll take care of you," she said quickly. Clayton brought out documents the next day. Thick papers. Official-looking seals. He said it was just temporary, only to help manage the property until things settled. I already knew what they were, so I brought my own. I printed a version of the deed that looked real in every way. Same format, same stamps, same layout. But buried deep inside the pages was a clause written in clear legal language. If anyone tried to file it or claim ownership, they would be admitting to knowingly signing false documents. Perjury. Fraud. No escape. We sat around the dining table. Denise kept offering me water. Ezra kept saying, "Take your time, sis." Clayton tapped his pen like he was waiting for a prize. I pretended my hands were shaking. "I don't want to mess this up," I whispered. That's okay, Denise said sweetly. Just sign where we point. So I did. I signed my name slowly, carefully, exactly where they wanted. Then I slid the papers back across the table. Their relief was instant. Denise smiled wider than I'd ever seen. Clayton leaned back like he'd just won something. Ezra let out a long breath. They hugged me. They thanked me. They told me I was doing the right thing. I kept my face calm and my voice soft. Inside, I felt nothing, because they didn't read what they signed. They didn't notice the clause hidden between the lines. They didn't realize that the moment they touched that paper, they tied their own hands. That night, I lay in bed listening to them celebrate downstairs. I heard laughter, glasses clinking, plans being made. They believed the cabin was theirs. They believed I had finally given in. But I wasn't giving up anything. I was letting them walk straight into their own confession, written in ink, signed by choice, and impossible to explain away later. For the first time, I slept peacefully, because the trap wasn't angry. It wasn't loud. It was already closed. 2 days later, I drove back to Big Fork alone. This time, I wasn't afraid. At the county office, a woman behind the desk reviewed the real deed and my mother's second will. She typed quietly for a long time, then looked up at me with surprise. You know this land is part of a federal survey, she said. I frowned. What kind of survey? She turned the screen so I could see. The area around the cabin had been marked for a future national park expansion. The government planned to buy the land within the year. Estimated value, $4.7 million. My chest tightened. That was the number they were chasing. That was why they rushed. Why they panicked. Why they tried to control me. The clerk officially filed the real documents. My name was now recorded as the only legal owner. Permanent. Untouchable. After that, I walked across the street to the sheriff's office. My hands were steady as I placed everything on his desk. The forged deed. Photos of the hidden camera. The torn practice signatures. The wine glass I had saved. Screenshots of threatening messages. Even the fake papers they had proudly signed. The sheriff's expression changed with every page. This is serious, he said quietly. I nodded. I know. He asked me to explain everything from the beginning. I told him about the pressure. The lies. The night Denise tried to unlock my phone. The way they planned to trap me legally. When I finished, the room was silent. They tried to drug you, he said finally. And commit fraud. Yes, I replied. And they thought I wouldn't notice. That afternoon, deputies went to the house. I didn't go with them. I sat in my car across the street and watched as lights flashed blue and red against the windows. Denise stepped outside first, shouting. Clayton followed, pale. Ezra looked stunned, like he still couldn't believe this was happening. For once, they weren't in control. They weren't smiling. They were afraid. I didn't feel happy. I felt clear. They didn't lose because I wanted revenge. They lost because they crossed lines that couldn't be undone. As I drove away, my phone buzzed nonstop with missed calls. I didn't answer a single one. The truth was finally out, and it was louder than anything they had tried to hide. The courtroom was full the morning the trial began. People from town filled the benches. Some were curious. Some already knew the story. I sat quietly in the front row, my hands folded, my heart steady. Denise avoided my eyes. Clayton kept whispering to his lawyer. Ezra looked small. When the judge entered, the room went silent. Denise spoke first. She cried. She said I misunderstood everything. She claimed the papers were meant to protect the family. Clayton nodded beside her, insisting I was emotional and unstable after my mother's death. Then the evidence was shown. The forged deed appeared on the screen. The signature practice pages. The hidden camera footage from my room. The video of Denise trying to unlock my phone late at night. The courtroom shifted. Whispers spread through the benches. Denise's voice began to shake. Clayton stopped talking completely. When it was Ezra's turn, he stood slowly. His hands were trembling. I can't do this anymore, he said suddenly. Everyone turned toward him. He looked at me once, then broke down. He admitted everything. He confessed about the debt, about the pressure, about how they believed the land was worth millions. Then his voice cracked as he said the words that made the room go silent. They said if she didn't sign, he whispered, we'd have her committed. Say she was unstable. Say she imagined things. My stomach tightened, even though I already knew. Ezra kept talking. He told them about the fake paperwork, the plan to isolate me, the rush to sell the land before anyone checked the records. Denise screamed for him to stop. He didn't. When he finished, the judge didn't speak for a long moment. Then came the verdict. Guilty of forgery. Guilty of fraud. Guilty of attempted coercion and conspiracy. The sound of handcuffs echoed in the room. Denise cried out as deputies led her away. Clayton stared at the floor, defeated. Ezra was taken last, tears running down his face. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just breathed. For the first time since the funeral, the weight on my chest lifted. They hadn't lost because I fought them. They lost because the truth finally stood in the open, where lies couldn't survive. As I walked out of the courthouse, the air felt lighter. Not because justice was loud, but because it was final. Months passed quietly. By the time summer arrived, the cabin no longer felt like a secret. It felt like home. I sat on the wooden deck every morning, wrapped in a blanket, watching the lake reflect the mountains. The air was clean. Still, nothing like the noise and pressure I left behind. One evening, I opened the last envelope my mother had written for me. Her handwriting was shaky but careful. She wrote that she knew her family would never stop chasing money, that she saw how they treated me, how they blamed me for everything. She said she hid the cabin not because she didn't trust me, but because she trusted only me. You were always the strongest, she wrote, even when they tried to convince you otherwise. Tears fell onto the paper. She said she hoped I would never need to fight them, but if I did, she wanted me protected. That was why she made the second will. That was why she left clues only I would notice. For the first time, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt chosen. That night, I lit a small fire near the deck. I held the last fake deed, the one they tried to use against me. I watched it burn slowly, the edges curling into ash. When it was gone, I felt lighter. Weeks later, a letter arrived with a prison stamp. It was from Ezra. He wrote that he was sorry, that he had been scared, that he hoped someday I would forgive him. His words were messy, rushed, desperate. I read it once. Then I took out a clean sheet of paper and placed it in an envelope. I mailed it back empty, not out of anger, but because some people don't need answers. They need silence. As the sun set over the lake, I realized something important. I didn't win because I got the land. I won because I stopped letting people decide my worth. The cabin wasn't my inheritance. Peace was. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was surviving anymore. I was finally free. If this story moved you, remember this. Knowing your legal rights and reading documents carefully can protect your future more than emotions ever will. Don't ignore red flags. Knowledge is power. Support our channel by liking, subscribing, and sharing so more real-life lessons like this reach others who need them.